Now, a lot of these things, these myths are based on just fear, irrational fear. I mean, fear by its very nature is irrational. But let's just say someone says, you know what, I don't think we should have gone in, and I don't like the fact that we're there, but I feel that we have an obligation to the people of Iraq, or I feel that
all
if
those lives would be wasted.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not that old, I'm only 37 years old, but a lot of the older folks that I've talked to have told me that that's the exact same argument that they used in Vietnam and ended up getting 60,000 people killed. Having more people get killed isn't going to bring back the people that are already dead. And if you believe it was a mistake to go, and like Ron Paul, and there you're bringing
like
Ron Paul,
well, as Ron Paul,
you believe that it's a mistake to stay, then all we should do is pull out of there and not get our guys killed and not bankrupt our economy trying to win a war against who are we fighting?
Yeah, exactly. That's also it's like, well, if we're supposed to stay in there, what is our objective?
Right, and nobody knows because there is no defined objective.
Right.
One other issue that is huge with everybody is the economy, because there's no inflation and the economy is doing great, says the government. People know different, especially if you get a mother who's at home with kids. She's out there buying groceries. She's putting gas in the car. She knows what's up. Pull this out. Once you start your conversation on the Constitution, page 26. I flip to page 20, and I'll do this with him. I'll go, you know something? Look at this. It says right here, no state, blah, 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 make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts. And then you say, do you know, have you heard, you of course know about the Federal Reserve. Do you know that we are supposed to be on a gold standard, a gold and silver standard according to this? And people go, yeah, I knew that. And you know that in 1971 we went off the gold standard, right? And they go, right. And you say, and that's when the politicians turned on the printing presses and the money supply went like this and prices went like this. Right. And you know, and I'll do a little fear mongering on them. I'll say there's never been a civilization that has gone on a pure paper currency that has lasted more than 40 years. And we went off in 1971. We're at 36 years right now. And we're starting to see it. You've heard about it in the news, haven't you, about the weak dollar? People go, yeah, I've heard about it. And you know, and you talk about how inflation is destroying the middle class and the poor, and how it doesn't make sense to save, because if you save $100 now, it only buys $80 worth of stuff 2 years from now. And how, you know, that makes people, and you get them to understand that all these things are related.
And they're impacting them, their lives. And also the fact that only Ron Paul has a solution for inflation.
Right, and it's again right here. You bring it up. Only Ron Paul, of all 15 or 18 presidential candidates, there's only one that even mentions the Federal Reserve and the gold standard, and it's Ron Paul. And people go, wow, you know, we should be on the gold standard. We should be on a hard money standard. And they go, yeah, we should. The only person who's going to bring us back to that is Ron Paul.
Okay, another thing on the economic issue, something that almost every American, is sympathetic about is the income tax. When you talk about the income tax, you say Ron Paul is going to abolish the Federal Reserve or end the income tax, and they look at you kind of shocked a lot of times, or they look at you kind of skeptically, like. They're kind of like, well, that's cute, but how is he going to do that?
You go back to, you take a cue from Ron Paul, if you've watched his speeches, and you go right back to foreign policy. 250,000 troops, 130 bases, 130 countries, 700 bases, $1 trillion a year. And you say, did you know all these things? No, I didn't know. Well, Ron Paul wants to bring the troops home, and if we do that, we'll save $1 trillion a year. And $1 trillion is more money than the federal government takes in from individual income taxes. So we could bring the troops home and eliminate the individual income tax. We'll still have corporate taxes and excise taxes and tariffs and these sorts of things. But we will save enough money that we can eliminate the individual income tax and still have enough money money to take care of all the people here at home that are dependent on Social Security and Medicare and need help, will still be able to do that. And you know, then they understand that this is actually a feasible thing.
Okay, they understand that it's actually possible to cut the spending without putting people on the street.
That's correct.
So, another thing, there's a lot of misinformation going on out there, put out by the media, and one of the things you'll hear is someone says, "Oh, he's an isolationist." So when someone says he's an isolationist, how do you correct them?
Again, act interested. Well, it's interesting that you say that because I've listened to Dr. Paul, and he considers himself to be a non-interventionist. An isolationist is someone, well, by my understanding anyway, because, you know, you always want to make it like, well, you know, I'm a normal guy and I'm fallible, so, you know, you're not laying down the law and rubbing their faces. You're like, by my understanding, an isolationist is somebody who doesn't want to trade with anyone, doesn't want to travel, doesn't want to have any diplomatic relations, just wants to, you know, put up a wall all the way around their border and never let anybody in or out. And my understanding of Dr. Paul is that he's a non-interventionist. He wants to stay out of the internal affairs of other countries, but he wants to lead by example. America used to be loved around the world because we were the shining city on a hill, as Ronald Reagan said. We were this beacon of freedom, and people were attracted to that and wanted to emulate that. And Ron Paul wants to get us back to that. Trade with people, travel, talk to people, have diplomacy, but don't force them to do things. Don't threaten them, don't have sanctions, don't have embargoes, don't do all these things trying to police the world, because all you're doing is pissing people off.
Okay, so that seems to cover that objection. Let's say you're going to an elderly person, and you know, if elderly people, they seem to be very well informed as far as if it's been on the news, they know about it. A lot of times, if Ron Paul's been on the news, they'll say, "Yeah, I saw that on the news." So a lot of them, they've heard reports that Ron Paul is going to end Social Security. So how do you counteract that objection?
Again, going back to foreign policy and the money that we'll save, and what Dr. Paul is proposing, and the reason that you do this, by the way, is because these old people that have heard everything there is to hear on the news have also heard that Social Security is not going to be around for me and you. They know it. They've already heard it. So you just remind them of that. You know that Social Security is going to, you know, go into default. I mean, it can't. You've heard that, right? And they go, yeah. Well, what Dr. Paul's plan is that we're going to save all this money overseas, and we'll be able to fund Social Security for the people that are dependent on it and who want it. You know, people like yourself. I mean, if you need it, you need it, and you know, we need to make sure that it's there for you, because Dr. Paul's a man of principle, and he believes in keeping promises that we make as a nation. But what he also wants to do is allow people like me to opt out of it, where we basically make an agreement with the government that I don't pay anything in, but I don't get any benefits, and any money that I paid in so far, I just have to kiss that off and it's gone. And I would be totally willing to do that, and I'll just take care of my own retirement and everything will be fine. And people go, okay, and you go, and then that's fair for everybody. And they go, oh yeah, that sounds pretty good. And then this is a perfect point, if you haven't brought it up yet, to really nail it home. Ron Paul, page 26, gold and silver, get us back on the gold standard, because and explain to them how the government has promised them a certain amount of dollars, but they haven't specified that the dollars will maintain a certain purchasing power. So you have to get them back on, you know, hard money, get rid of the Federal Reserve, low inflation, because these people are scared. A lot of times this is all that they have to live on, and it doesn't help them to get $3,000 a month from Social Security if a tank of gasoline costs them $400.
Yeah, right. So the government, they're not committed to keeping Social Security on par with inflation.
That's right.
It's not going to be able to keep up with
They say that they are, and they do cost of living adjustments or what have you, but it's in the government's interest to keep the official inflation number as low as possible, because that's what these cost of living adjustments are based on. Government says inflation is at 2%. You and I and anyone with a pulse knows it's at least 10%. And right now they're actually inflating the money supply at a rate of 20%. So eventually, all things being equal, everything will be 20% more expensive.
Yeah.